Quinny confirms that she has restarted the stream. So, I'm not sure what to do in the meantime. What do I have that's cool that I could do? Everything looks green on my end. I wonder if I need to restart my chat. Okay, Nafarsis confirms that he can hear me, and Quindy got the stream time mixed up in her head. And there are Bob and Julie. So someone's out there, and I think you can hear me, and that's okay, Quindy. I mess stuff up all the time, like my mic, apparently. So I think we're under control. I think we got some people out there. Hopefully we have some quiet listeners as well. Estrogene also confirms that I can be heard. So I have some painting to do today, and I have some stuff to talk about, so I guess we might as well get to it. Oh, I have something to show off, too. I forgot to send the title of this show to Justin this week. I'm very bad at that, so I'm sure it's just a boring title now, like episode, I don't know, what is it, 22, 21, 22, something right like that. I started making a list so that I could remember. So, and I even printed some stuff out because I was starting to forget what topics were like on which one. Like I can remember what topics I talked about as a rule, but if you say, was that episode 8 or 15, I'm like, I don't know. So in case it comes in handy, I will now know that. Although, and I'm sure it's because they're super busy at Reaper. They haven't been able to upload stuff, from Twitch to the YouTube channel as they usually do. So I think some of the streams are even temporarily unavailable because they're old enough that they've cycled off Twitch and they're not up on YouTube yet. But I'm sure at some time or another that will be fixed. It's come to be the time of year where we're all pretty busy. And I just found out I just took on an additional super quick project. So I will be even busier. But let me show you the thing that I've been teasing about for all this time. So let's go to the other view and get a little more light. And this is the miniature that I've been teasing. I'll get the gray paper out as well and get a little closer. Let me know if it's too white or if it looks like, I think I'm gonna bump the exposure up a little even. So unless someone tells me that it's super blown out, I'm gonna do that. That looks like it might be a little bit blown out. Prime won't let Quindy resub yet, so she's getting stuck behind ads. So please be patient if our assistant and companion Quindy takes a minute to get to something. So this is a very cranky gingerbread man. I have something I want to do on the base, but I was taking way too long getting this done, so I just wanted to get it painted up so that, Reaper has it for pictures and stuff. And at first I did think about painting him like Gingy. I don't know if you've anyone who's watched Shrek knows what I mean when I say Gingy. But for color reasons and such, I decided to not go that way. Hi, Melander. So I went more with like a classic, obviously red for the... I did think about, because these peppermints also come with green stripes. So I thought about that, but I thought I'll keep the buttons green and then make the candy cane and the peppermints red. And then make his eyes hopefully cranky blue. So, hey Valander. You get a day off. Well, that's nice. Get ready for the holiday. I don't know if anyone wants to share what they're doing for the holiday in the chat. We don't live near our families, so we typically just hang out with some friends and play games and eat food, and it's pretty fun. But that's what we have planned. So this guy is going to be in the holiday sampler. Now this one is actually metal because I got him before they had finished the conversion to Bones USA process. But I believe the one you get in the holiday sampler would be Bones USA. And then if I am recalling correctly, and I think I asked Ron to confirm, but I'm not sure if you confirmed this or not, you also get the paint colors Ginger Cookie and Holly Berry. Bob and Julie are going to be working on Thanksgiving. Oh, you've got some cool stuff you're working on that we look forward to seeing. Reaper John has Friendsgiving on Thursday and Sarah's parents over the weekend. Valander is vegetating. Thanksgiving meal this year is over Zoom. So you get to eat whatever you want. I mean, that's kind of option. Reaper John confirms that I am correct about the colors, which is good because I'm very, very forgetful. Now, I will admit, I took notes of the colors, and I will make a blog post where I share the colors I used. I did not use ginger cookie on the Cookie Man. I wanted that really dark, spicy kind of gingerbread so that the accessories would really contrast well with it. But once I knew the paints that were in the set this year, I did try to use those. So I used holly berry on like the red for the candy parts, and then Christmas wreath for the green. And I'd already painted the white. I think there was a blue that seemed holiday-ish. I took these paints off my desk to prepare for today, but I do have it all written down. Pendrake asks, is a musket an option with this little feller? To my knowledge, this is the way he comes. The arm was separate on mine. I would guess that even in Bones USA, the arm's going to be separate because of underhangs or overhangs or whatever they call it that rip up the molds. Valander says, Holly Berry is my favorite bright red paint of any company. Bright red, remarkably opaque, and useful as all get out. I did enjoy working with the Holly Berry. And then I think I used either all Christmas special paint or all holiday special paints and paints that are in production. But I guess when I put that up in my vlog, we'll find out. But I took pictures, so I do know what all the colors are. I just don't know what they are off the top of my head. I did have one of my little project bins, so I'll recommend this again if you haven't done it. If you like to work on multiple things at a time, and since now with the stream stuff, I always have I might have paints that I'm carrying over from one show to the next. I like to separate that out from the paints I'm using for what I'm working on. Big Apple SD77 asks, when does the holiday stuff go live? And hopefully Reaper John will confirm. The 12 days of Reaper starts on the 1st. So there's special holiday miniatures that are only available during that. I believe see, now I don't know about the sampler. If that starts, Thanksgiving or Black Friday, or if that also doesn't start until December 1st. And likewise the paints. Hopefully John is here to help us out. A lot of stuff comes out on Cyber Monday and some other things that start on December, which includes the sampler and 12 days, it looks like. So I think the paint bundles in the cups are going to start Cyber Monday. So that's paints from the current collection and sample paints and maybe leftover special edition paints from like ReaperCon or something like that. That starts Cyber Monday. I don't know what other special things might start Cyber Monday. Maybe Reaper John can confirm. But this guy who's in the holiday sampler with the 2 paint colors, and then the 12 days figures, which I should have put the graphic for that. I'm not sure if Ron sent it to me yet. Put the graphic for that in my little photo album thing. I can confirm that this guy is one of them, if I'm remembering correctly from Reaper Live. And I was thinking about painting him on stream to demonstrate painting red. Because the one I painted last year, I painted both his top and his pants red, but different colors of red. And my parents really like that miniature, and they'd like me to paint one from them. So I was thinking I'd do that on stream. So if you kind of wanted to follow along, you can get a copy of him or anything else that you want to paint red on. So that's not one where you're going to need a particular miniature. All right, so Reaper John is going to confirm for us 8 mystery and 10 mystery paint bundles. So that's bundles of 10 paints and 8 paints that you don't know what they are. But there's no dupes within a bundle. So if you buy a bundle of 8, there's no dupes within that bundle. A bundle of 10, there's no dupes with that. But if you bought like a bundle of 8 and a bundle of 10, there might be. The remaining stock of pirate ships is going to go up on Cyber Monday. So all 3 of those things are Cyber Monday. Pendrake is hoping that for future years, they will add additional arms options to the Gingerbread Man, which I don't know if I have any input on that. So that you could eventually build a squad to go with the Nutcracker soldiers for hunting down the Rat King. I mean, that might be fun to have a few different poses of him with different weapons. I believe Christine Van Patten sculpted this, and then one therefore assumes that she sculpted it digitally, and it might not be impossible to repose or add things. Well, I mean, it's not impossible to repose or add things with physical sculpts either. It just can take a little more effort. So hopefully I'll show the Christmas stuff off again in the middle, and hopefully remember what John just told us. And if I don't remember, hopefully one of you will remember what John just told us about the dates for things. And I will get back to this guy. And there's something I kind of want to talk about with this guy. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see where we left off. So what I went over in the show last week was using stuff that designers do, because designers know a lot about color. So if we feel not very confident about color, designers are good people to borrow from, because as they say, good artists borrow, but great artists steal. So I was talking about last week getting into details about how would I effectively steal this color scheme. So for part of that, I went in and used a computer program. There's a free one called GIMP that you can get for both Mac and PC. And I did eyedropper samples of the colors of each of these things. So I was looking for the lightest colors, some of the middle colors, and then darkest colors. Oh, I'm not zoomed out enough. So my idea was to, because matching by eye, particularly if you're trying to match against a screen, you're trying to match against a screen to a physical product, that's going to be tough. And one of the things I discovered when I did this, I ended up doing it twice because I had a picture that I took with my phone and then a picture that I scanned, and they were slightly different. And then I took those different colors and put them together and printed it out. And then these are actual swatches of paint of me on stream showing you how I would try to match these. So one of the interesting things was a pillow that I had thought was yellow turned out to actually be kind of a light khaki green. And then I had to think about, do I need to change it to what theirs is for it to work well together? Because sometimes you do. Sometimes you will see color differently because of the colors that are around it. And if you use the color you think you see instead of the color that's actually there, it'll end up looking weird. So I tested all the colors that I had selected on a separate piece of paper to see if I thought they worked together as a set. Because what's more important to me than copying this exactly is a selection of colors that are going to work well together to paint an attractive miniature. So that was my ultimate goal. This is the metallic color. That's going to be the shade for the metallic color. And I feel that I had those. And then after I did all that and I started to paint on the figure, I said to you all, oh, in case anyone's curious, our figure today is a Lanter, the Lost Prince. Now he's the Lost Prince of Pillows. So as I was starting to paint, I said to you guys that I wanted to get a bit of color all over, you know, some of the colors all over the figure so that I could make sure that my color selection was working together. And then I totally did not do that. As you can see, I started out, I was like, well, okay, because it's going to be hard to reach the inside of this cloak, I'm going to start by painting the inside of the cloak. And then I just ended up putting green colors on stuff, and then I got distracted blending. And this does happen to me in the real world, and I would bet that sometimes it happens to you, and I think that's worth talking about. So if you're trying to do something different than the way you usually do it, it tends to not happen as much if you're trying, like you normally dry brush and you're trying to learn to wet blend. I think it's a little less likely to happen in that scenario. But depending on what you're trying to do, it's really easy to sit down. Like, let's say contrast. How many of us are trying to push our contrast? I would guess, like, everybody. So you sit down and you're like, all right, this is the time. This time I'm really pushing my contrast. I'm going to do, you know, really do bright highlights and dark shadows and all that stuff. And then you sit down and you paint, and then you come back the next day and it looks pretty much the same as what you usually paint. Or maybe you even think you did it and it takes more than a day for you to realize that you didn't. And I have done stuff like this all the time. I had a blog post that I wrote not too long ago about I took a workshop and some classes from the Spanish painter Sergio Calvo. And one of his main criticisms of my work, which is very valid, is that I don't do those really bright, small pop highlights. He also painted it in a slightly different way, so I was practicing that. But I was trying to get the idea of what I'm trying to do here, too, is paint in some of the big picture, and then once I think everything's working, start working on all the little details and stuff. I'm going to, don't get seasick, I'm going to move the camera. I don't think I had it as far over as I normally do. And then I will square it up. Okay. Apologies for that. I'm not trying to hide the palette from you guys. It's just my experience has been that if the palette and the miniature are both in frame, especially if there's little drops of paint on the palette, the camera starts to be way more excited about what's on the palette and doesn't focus on the miniature. So what was going on when I did that last week? And mainly what was going on is that I was talking to you guys and reading stuff in the chat, and we were having fun. And I didn't have my mind on my plan. And that's what probably happens to you when you do something like that. So, well, I'll put my palette back here while I mess with paint. So I wanted to mention that because I think that that's something that happens to a lot of us, and it's something to watch out for. In particular, if what you're doing, like if you're painting, you're trying to paint with more contrast, you're trying to do something that's mostly like what you already do. So if you're trying to go from wet blend or from dry brushing to wet blending, that is a very different thing than what you normally do. But if you're trying to, just push your contrast, or, I'm not great at painting red, so I'm going to practice painting red, whatever kind of thing that you're going to paint the way you normally paint. You're just trying to get a different result a little bit. That's when I find that it's really likely for you to just get distracted and paint the way you always paint. And what it is, it's like when you're driving. If you're driving home from you're driving home from work or school or someplace that you frequently go to, you will very often go into autopilot, and you're not going to remember every step of your journey and so on. And it's a similar thing when you're painting, particularly if you're used to painting, you like throw on some music, or you have a TV show you like to do, or you go in a Discord chat or something. Those are all great things to do that can help you paint longer because you're not getting bored and stuff. But if your goal is you're trying to learn this new thing, sometimes that stuff is bad because it makes it easier for you to go off target. So when I'm trying to concentrate and do something new that I haven't done before, I generally try to minimize distractions. And so in that blog post that I was mentioning where I was trying to paint, more in the Sergio Calvo way, that is what happened the first time. So I sat down and I started to paint, and, I put my audiobook on, and I just kind of got in the flow, and what I painted looked good, but it wasn't what I was trying to do. It was what I would normally do. It wasn't the thing I was trying to do different. So the next day I had to take a look at it and think about, okay, where did I go wrong? And I felt like I went wrong enough that even though it looked fine, I decided to repaint the whole thing because I had not been learning the lesson. So I don't know if that's happened to any of you. You can comment in the chat if that has happened to you. But that certainly happens to me on occasion. The problem with me wanting to do, paint a little bit on all of the areas is then I have to have a bunch of paint out, so that's going to take a minute. I guess I should be showing you guys these paints too. So the greens were, I've got blue liner if I want to get darker in the shadows, which I did do in the underhang of his cloak. Then ancient oak, and this is a little lighter than I wanted, so I do need to mix a combo of these actually. And then for the highlights, I'm using the Medusa green. If I want to go higher than that, I will probably add some of the Osiris sand that I picked out to put in his hair. But once you have a set of colors, if you mix other colors that you need from those, it's going to help your figure look more cohesive and like the color scheme works together and stuff. So at a certain point, and it's the same thing, like I didn't necessarily pick out everything I'm going to do with, you know, his, the straps holding on his gear or his quiver or whatever. I'm not sure that I assigned colors to those things. But if I need more colors, I will probably mix stuff from what I have. Valander says, not as much, although I started painting a figure with the intent of learning a new technique to realize during preparation that it would not be suitable for that technique as a beginner. Certainly it can be the case that figures you pick out, or figures for certain techniques, are going to work better than others. Transparent cloth is certainly one that comes to mind for me, because if it's sculpted like a big... you know, it's sculpted like a big, thick sweater, trying to make that look transparent is not going to go that well. So that's one where I tend to try to pick my colors carefully. I'll get this as well. I'll put this out just in case. But yes, so that is learning something is a different experience than doing something. And I think we don't always think of it that way. So then we'll get mad at ourselves because we didn't do the thing that we set out to do. But it's like, to go back to the going home thing. Have you ever been where you're coming home from someplace where you normally go, but you're supposed to stop at the drugstore and pick something up, or drive by a friend's house and drop something off, and then you forget? Because I drive this route all the time, and this is, you know, I turn here, and then you're home, and you weren't supposed to go home. You were supposed to go somewhere else. So it's kind of like that. So that'll often be what's messing you up when you're trying to do contrast and stuff like that. Making sure that I know what I'm doing with my colors. I believe that is correct. That one if I want to go darker. Yes, thank you, Casmania. You have been subbed for a very long time, 31 months. And I have that happen when I'm studying like traditional art stuff too. Or it's hard because you're juggling. Like when you're new to everything, it's going to be hard not to mess something up because you're juggling so many things. Like you're trying to make the paint the consistency it needs to be, and you're trying to manipulate the brush the way you need to manipulate the brush. And it's just you're juggling a lot of factors, so it's not weird that you're not getting everything right. All right, so what I was going to share some, once I get the paint on here, I'm missing the light color for his hair. That's so light. I may do one in between. I was going to share some Canadian trivia with you today. I imagine some of you are having more wintry weather now, but I'm still, you know, it got a bit cold, but I'm still kind of clinging to the idea of fall, so that's why I'm painting the fall color scheme guy a little bit. I'm sure we will all have our fill of red and green before very long, and then white on the ground and elsewhere. See, now I have a color that I don't remember why I brought it over. That's intriguing. I bet I meant it to be here instead of that color. See, I do normally paint area by area, so this is a good style, but me attempting to do this on stream while also trying to be entertaining and deal with all the paint is definitely going to be me losing the plot a couple of times. All right. I have to check if this is my good brush. So I buy the Winsor Newton Series 7, and the way I wear brushes out, I kind of lose the tip after a while, which is unfortunate. I'd rather be Anne. The way Anne wears brushes out is that they just get pointier and pointier. So she needs to buy new ones to do big areas, but her worn out brushes just become detail brushes, which is very cost effective. But I no longer seem to wear brushes out that way. So what I was doing was checking to see which one was longer, because that is the one that has the best tip. I really have to develop a system where I like right on the end or something. So I am going to go back to painting the front of this guy, or the inside of the cloak before anything else, because that is only likely to get messed up when I start to put colors in other areas. I'm also seeing a little spot that I missed. I think the coverage is pretty good apart from that. Painting that, he's got a little foot down there, so that's going to be fun to paint. I'm just going to have to go like that or something, I think. Okay, so trivia. So just to get my little guy back here for a minute. So originally I said I wanted to paint him as Gingy from Shrek. And one of the things Gingy says is, not my gumdrop buttons. So to paint these as gumdrops, I would have had to make them more speckly, because gumdrops have like little granules of sugar all on the outside. And I'd already painted the cookie part to look very speckly, as a spicy cookie often does. So I didn't want to do that. So instead, I wanted to paint them to look more like Smarties. And you're going to say, if you're from America, you're going to say that is not what Smarties look like. And this is where the trivia comes in. So in America, Smarties are like dry candy pastilles, coins. Often you get them in a like cellophane tube where there's a bunch of them in a row in different colors. And we have those candies in Canada. I do not remember what we call them. I don't think anyone likes them well enough to remember what we call them, really. Those were kind of one of the, third tier Halloween candies, in my opinion. To be eaten later after the good stuff was gone. But we have and also in the UK, because some of our candies from the UK, a candy called Smarties. And Smarties are kind of like M&Ms, like original M&Ms. It's candy-coated chocolate in a fairly small candy. But the colors tend to be different. So they're a little more pastel as a rule. And the candy itself is, if I'm remembering correctly, and it has been like 20 years or something, so maybe I'm not, the candy shell coating isn't as crunchy as an M&M. It's kind of a softer coating. So I don't think they make any claims about not melting in your hand, because I think they might melt in your hand. And then another food that is different that really surprised me is Special K. Special K cereal, of all things, is a little bit different in Canada. So in America, it's like a flake, I guess kind of like corn flakes or something, but probably not corn. It's probably wheat instead of corn. I don't know. And in Canada, it's a little cup shape. So it's kind of like your hand. It's just little, and it's little. So I'm not even sure. It probably, the cup would fit over the end of my brush, maybe a little bigger than that. And that is our Special K. I was very shocked when I came here and discovered that Special K was not the same in America. Not that it's like my favorite cereal ever or anything. But. And then you can sometimes get the Canadian, or more often British, I imagine, versions of candy bars here. There are people who bring them over for expatriates like myself, which, you know, mainly I don't get them because I'm sad and miss the candy so much. I mean, candy's candy. I mean, okay, a coffee crisp is a little different than anything you can get here. But we used to go to this little mini board game convention, and they would do this thing where they'd ask people to bring stuff from their region. And I'm like, well, I don't know that where I live in Tennessee has something that's massively different than anywhere else in Tennessee or whatever. And then I thought, well, why don't I bring some Canadian candy? So I had to find one of these places online that ships in Canadian candy. Then another Canadian food story is, what was that color? Hold on. Get distracted by my colors here. I think that was the one I picked for that pillow. And that certainly looks like highly contrasted. Quinny says, Bug Lips recently made the statement, what do you mean you don't have turnips for Thanksgiving? Some of his differences are doofy differences, though. Yeah, I was going to talk about Thanksgiving, too. So there are several differences in Canadian Thanksgiving. A primary one amongst them is the timing. So Canadian Thanksgiving is, I believe, the second Monday in October. So it's in October. It is well spaced out from Christmas. It's the actual day off is a Monday, although many people do all the big family food party and stuff on Saturday or Sunday. It's not considered odd if you do the eating on a different day. And I think that is way better for a couple of reasons. Not because I'm Canadian even, but as an introvert, this spreads out your big togetherness holidays. So you get a nice break in between. Because moving to America, one of the hardest things about moving to America is that it's like this sprint from Thanksgiving until the day after New Year's. And at some point, I usually snap because there's just been way too many people and demands on my time and things I didn't volunteer to do that I have to do. And I was not mentally prepared for that. Certainly, I was not mentally prepared to start working retail and then have Black Friday. Our big crazy day, although Black Friday is so huge that it's now spreading. It's like the blob. It's spreading into Canada. But historically, our big day had been the day after Christmas, which I'll explain why in just a sec. But anyway, so I kind of miss Canadian Thanksgiving because, you know, a month between eating the turkey dinner, that's not enough time. As much as I like the turkey dinner and all the trimmings and stuff, I would rather have more of a break between. So I probably need to paint that metallic thing sooner than later, I'm thinking. What was that color I told you I brought for the metallic thing? Hey, Rings. Late is better than never. So thanks for joining us. That's right, I was going to use this Nightshade Purple as the shadow color for my metallic choice, which is Pieces of 8. So I'm going to have to temporarily take a break from the putting color everywhere, although let's put a little more of this orange so it dries. I was just talking a little about Canadian candy differences and Canadian Thanksgiving. What is that? A strap. I'm going to pretend that's part of his outfit. I could go look at the one that Michael Proctor painted to find out what stuff is, but I'm just going to forge ahead. The other reason I think that Thanksgiving on a Monday and it's just a 3-day holiday is nice is because if you're in college or whatever and you're far enough away, there's much less expectation that you're going to be able to come home for the holidays. There's a lot less pressure on it as a holiday than there is here, I think. But then where we get the extra day, so we do not get cheated of extra days off. We get the extra day at Christmas. So the day after Christmas is Boxing Day, and everybody gets that off. But that is the kind of the historical equivalent of Black Friday. Where I lived, you weren't allowed to open, so there were a few stores that would just go ahead and get the fine. But it wasn't that big of a thing. I suspect it has turned into much more of a thing since I've left, given that even Black Friday is turning into more of a thing. But the meal is mostly similar, but as Quindy mentions, now I'm not a turnip fan. We did have some family who would bring turnips to the meal, but I don't think it's traditional. It's more the things we don't have. Like, so sweet potatoes or yams are very much a part of the meal, but I never saw them prepared with little marshmallows until I got here. We're way more about the maple syrup or brown sugar. We can even darker in here. So there are some places on the sky that are not the easiest to hit. So we're gonna do the age-old trick of make them dark and hope nobody notices. So turkey's traditional, stuffing is traditional, cranberry sauce is traditional, mashed potatoes, and some kind of sweet potatoes or yams, and then just whatever you want. So we don't have something like green bean casserole where like everybody has it, except maybe turnips in Newfoundland. We had family who grew turnips, so they would bring turnips when they came to Thanksgiving. But I admit I'm not. I mean, I'll eat them. They're not like celery or something that I super hate. But they're also not like something that I super love. And then my last Canadian food trivia story is Kraft macaroni and cheese. In Canada, we call it Kraft dinner. Like, it even says that on the box. And it's not the same. So, is mashed turnips a thing? Like mashed potatoes with turnips? Yes, that in fact is what my family people would bring, is mashed turnips. I don't know. I mean, I imagine you probably still put butter in it, because butter is pretty much the secret ingredient of good cooking. Sweet potatoes do not need marshmallows. They are sweet enough. Yes. I mean, okay, I like a little brown sugar and butter. And you can't go wrong with cooking things in maple. But yes, we shouldn't do those things. But sometimes I do. So my mom sent me down some Canadian Kraft dinner. And then I got some of the American style from the store. Like just the classic orange powder one. And then we did a taste test. So I had some of my friends over, and I made both of them, and then I served them in bowls where they didn't know which was which. And the Canadian one was the favorite of all but one person. I think there were 7 or 8 people who did this, and that person knew which was which, and he, as he put it, he preferred the American one with the taste of chemicals from his youth. So I think we just have slightly different laws about the additives and stuff that you can put in foods. And I'm not trying to claim that all Canadian food is like incredibly healthy or anything like that. We have plenty of sugar and fat and salt in our food as well. But there just must be some differences in, permitted colorings and stuff like that. So this orange is covering pretty well, actually. I'm kind of impressed. The second coat might do it. Although then I might wet blend a little. Quindy says, apparently Newfies have a whole traditional meal of boiled and mashed things. So all things must be boiled and mashed, huh? Surely there's some sort of meat that is not also boiled, although you can boil beef, I think. Corius09 says, putting turnips in your potatoes for mashed potatoes makes the potatoes taste better. And Rings envies Canada and Europe's food production laws. Yeah, honestly, even if they strengthen those up, I wouldn't object. But yeah, it's kind of the Wild West is still here, and it is in what people are allowed to eat. So I don't, this isn't like a super good hooky brush. I like when I get one of these brushes and it's got a bit of a hook on the end, because what I'd be able to get in around this staff really well without getting too much paint on other things. He is definitely one of those miniatures where you have to figure out the places you're not going to be able to reach later and get to them before you get too much paint on things. A little center bit. This is going to take a minute to dry, I think. Queenie says salted beef, and there's a company that sells it in a plastic tub. Well, nothing about that sounds particularly appetizing, but okay, I believe it. I mean, they have winter for like 10 months of the year there, so I'm sure the options are limited. I mean, that's one of the places where I think other Canadians are like, well, your weather's a little intense, so you know it's not great when that's happening. I'm not trying to do as much wet blending on this robe. The little folds are much smaller and also shallower, so I think it'll probably just be easier to do layering. And in fact, I should probably layer up from a darker color. So I will revise my big plan already before I even finish putting my big plan into effect. It's looking more dry. And I tend to try to work from a darker color up on stream just because I think it wastes less of your time watching me do stuff. But I'll probably still do a little bit of shading on here. I mean darker shading. So I think that's all my Canadian food trivia, at least that I remember off the top of my head. Certainly there are things you can't get here. So there, I used to like these things, they're like sour cream and onion rings. I don't even know if they call them anything other than that. But it's kind of like, well, and see, we call them cheesies, and you call them cheese puffs or something. So it's kind of like the consistency of a cheese puff or a cheese ball. And then they put sour cream and onion flavoring on it. And you cannot get those here. So in the absence of that, I thought, well, I guess I'll try these Funyun things. And that was so not that. My response to Funyuns was, this is neither fun nor yun. And I have never again eaten those. That was highly disappointing to me. Yeah, no, they're not. It's not Funyuns at all, rings. I was lured into eating Funyuns on the belief that they might be kind of the same, and it was not. I was traumatized. We also have different snack cakes. So we have one of our brands is Hostess. I think Vachon is the other one. And there you get into the whole two languages thing. So they make a snack cake. And it's really called a half moon. But because they have to put both the languages on the package, we always called them loon moons. So we're basically calling it moon moon. Like Moon Moon, the wolf, I guess. But the flaky from Vachon is the superior one, if you can get your hands on that. I'm going to assume that this should actually also be... He's got this annoying little collar in here. And I think he's going to be the prince of places that are going to be hard to reach later is what he's the prince of. Bug Lips loves Funyuns. He didn't know they were real. He thought they were a fake movie thing. That is hilarious. Ring says, yeah, I loved those as a kid, but I hate them now. Also, they have yellow food coloring, and I found out later in life that I'm allergic to synthetic red and yellow. Wow, I bet a lot of things have synthetic red and yellow. Yeah, Cooney, it's possible that they, like the American companies, have changed their recipe and they're not as awesome now, but we certainly enjoyed a good flaky. And I feel like there was some other one that I used to eat that I'm not remembering. Then one of the candy bars that I think is actually Canadian and not British is Eat More, which is kind of like, I don't know, it's got peanuts and it's like super chewy. So I mean, it's not toffee exactly. I don't know. It's hard to describe what an Eat More is. Other than a good way to get released to eat. And then I think it was Bug Lips who used to bring me the one candy bar that I couldn't find anywhere, which isn't even a candy bar. It's like a cherry drenched in sugar syrup sauce, coated in chocolate with nuts in it. It's called a cherry blossom, or a way to get cavities immediately is another way to think of that too. But for some reason, I got weirdly nostalgic about that one year. And this was back when ReaperCon was in the first hotel. So right, the year or two after it stopped being in the, okay, he's just gonna roll, that's fine. The year or two after it stopped being at the Reaper factory facility. And I think I had said something on Facebook about this or somewhere, because my mom tried to get them, and she went to, like, you know, just like convenience stores where you would have found them back in the day. And then she even went to some like fancy candy store downtown, and she's like, you just can't get these things anymore. And then Bug Lips was all like, well, we still have them over where I live. And then he would bring me a case, and I mentioned they're like, you really can feel like cavities are starting in your mouth as you're eating them. So there's no way to eat a case of those. So I would share them with other unsuspecting people at ReaperCon. I don't know if this brush is quite doing the job, but I'm going to stick with it. Ring says that the yellow and red food coloring is in most candies and snacks and about a third of everything else. Huh. So these are things, at least, that have to be labeled so that you can find it when you're picking out foods, it sounds like. I was trying to pick colors for this guy that are like regular production colors, but for the metallic, the pieces of 8 just fit so well that I had to go with that. And I do like it. I think I might need to put a little wash over it and then accent it. So in case anyone came in later, I'll just share my palette briefly, since I have to keep it off to the side. So I've just got various value mixes of the areas, and then the metallic is way over here on the side. And this is actually not black or even blue liner. This is one of the other colors that I enjoy as a very dark color, which is Nightshade Purple. And I felt like it worked well with the little slight purple undertone of the pieces of 8. So that is what I painted the section, and then I put the pieces of 8 over to get the little crevices in between the scales filled. But since pieces of 8 is pretty darn shiny, I think that I will do, actually I could do more of a shaded metallic thing. Let's try that. So I'm just going to mix the Nightshade Purple directly with some pieces of 8 and make a darker color. So it's going to be darker and not as shiny. And I should have done this the first time, but you know, you guys think that we get everything right all the time, and we don't. I think sometimes the difference between a display painter, you know, high-level display painter, and someone who isn't is the insane willingness to just do something over and over and over again until it's right. In our minds. Even then, it's probably not right. It's just eventually even we get tired. So I think insanity might be the difference is what I'm saying. Okay, so that's a little darker of a color, and now I can put the super bright color, but I'm going to use a brush with a bit of a better point. So this is one of the Reaper Sable brushes to put the metallic on to try to control. Because here I don't want to put it on the entirety of all the scales. I want to leave some of that darker color showing. But that was the other thing I was going to tell you guys. So many of you probably know that there's a Wheel of Time TV series that is airing on Amazon Prime, especially if you're already a Prime person. You probably know all about this because they've been telling us all about it. So I had numerous friends who were like, well, did you watch it? What did you think? And it's not entirely weird that people would ask me that, because in my previous life, before I became a miniature painter, I ran an online game based on the Wheel of Time, and I compiled a list of facts from the books called the Wheel of Time Concordance, which that got around the web a lot. So at the time, under my maiden name, that was kind of the thing I was internet famous for. And then I got married and distracted. I actually met my husband on the game that I ran. But you know, sometimes you just I wanted a more physical hobby, something less cerebral, since I am cerebral enough. I don't know whether I meant to bring an overlight or metallic to highlight that, but I didn't. So if you're familiar with it, like there's games called MUDs. And there's variations of that with different names based on the code, and the one I ran was a mush. So it's called Tales of Tavern Mush. Every now and then I do meet someone who knows what I mean when I say that. So anyway, after friends were like, well, have you watched this? Have you watched this? I'm like, fine. I normally like to let things where I'm used to being able to stream on our terms now, so I'm used to the Netflix thing where they just drop the whole show. So for channels that don't do that, I often just wait until the whole show is there and then I watch. But we had these impatient friends, so I was like, all right, I'll sit down and watch it. And I started having feelings, and I didn't expect it, because as much as I say I was like this Wheel of Time person, they're not a holy, sacred document to me. Like, you know, there's some okay books. It's not. I actually didn't even finish the series until like earlier this year. So I would, because I'm a forgetful person, so I would reread when a new book came out. And after you've read The Eye of the World like more than 12 times, you kind of get over that. So I was like, you know what? I'll just wait until he's done, and then I'll read it. And then even when it was done, I got distracted and I didn't read it. But I started listening to audiobooks a couple years ago, and I listened to them while I paint. And I finally finished earlier this year. And so I was proud of the accomplishment. I was a little like, I didn't hate the way the story ended exactly. I didn't like the end of the book. Like, I don't want to say more than that, because then that's going to get spoilery. But I expected more information in the wrap-up than was provided, I guess would be a non-spoilery way to explain my dissatisfaction. Because we just know so much about, you know, the politics and every person's life and all this stuff. I expected more wrap-up. Anyway, so we started watching this, and I was a little concerned from the preview that I wasn't going to agree with all the casting choices and some of the other stuff that was going on. But I'm usually pretty open-minded about stuff like that. Like, I love The Expanse. I consider it to be simultaneously like the most faithful adaptation I've ever seen, and also the most innovative, because they stuck to what was in the books, but to introduce some characters earlier, they made up a whole bunch of, like, a whole half of the show is made up, but it does totally fit in, and I thought it was done very well. But so at a certain point, my husband started laughing because I was just like yelling things at the television. Like I think he started watching me more than the show. So I started taking notes during it, and then I wrote up all my thoughts for the friends who want to know what I thought, and I put it on my blog just because I have nowhere else to put it. So if you're curious, there's a very clear spoiler marking before I start talking about spoiler stuff. So if you just want to read pretty much the backstory that I just told you about how I used to run this game and wrote this document and stuff, with links to the old Wayback Machine copies of these things even, you can go to my blog. Or if you watch the show and you want to see what I ranted about, you can go past the spoiler alert. I don't know if I'll do that for every episode. My husband thinks I should, I think, just because it amused him so much. And most of the choices I was annoyed about, it was, well, okay, there was one thing that I was just like, what, why, how, like, okay, I get why you're doing this, but I still think it's stupid. But most of them were like, okay, if this works like that, then what's going to happen with this character arc? Like, aren't you invalidating some of how this person is supposed to be? Or what they're supposed to, you know, the experiences that they're supposed to go through. Alright, I need an even better little brush. Little brush. So this is, so Winsor, if you aren't familiar with the Winsor Newton Series 7, and I think Da Vinci does this too, I just don't necessarily remember the names. So the classic Winsor Newton, the Series 7, which is named for, that was Queen Victoria's favorite size of brush, is size 7. And then it comes in other sizes, so that's confusing, but okay. So that's their regular series, and that, it's kind of got, I call it a full belly. So it kind of bulges, you know, out a little as it comes from the ferrule, and then it goes down to the small point. And I like that brush a lot for blending and base coating and stuff like that. For massive detail work, they also have this one called the miniature. Do I have an even bigger one? And so it's funny. So there's a Series 7, but it's Series 7 miniature, and it does say that right on the thing. That doesn't mean it's the only brush you should paint miniatures with. But you can see it has kind of a different shape of head. It's like a cone. The sides go straight up to a point, and it's much shorter. I mean, these are different sizes of brush, but even if I had, yeah, I have a smaller. So that's, and also the sizing is just mental because these are both zeros. I'm like, okay, sure. The 2 looks smaller than the 1. And this, yeah, this is a 1 against a regular 0. So I find that wedge shape with the shorter bristle is helpful to doing detail work. I didn't like them when I first tried them. That was the brush that Marika and Jen Haley and people that I really admired when I started in miniature paint were using, and I tried it and I'm like, I do not understand. But eventually I came back to the ones I had bought and I tried them again, and I'm like, oh, okay, they work very well for this task. So freehand, little fiddly details, I've been using them more and more for that. I think the equivalent in Da Vinci is the Restauro, the retouch brush, I think. But I don't know if it does the wedge thing or if it's just a shorter bristle. I may have tried some once, but that was so long ago now that I don't remember. I'm going to have to let that dry a little. There's actually a little, like, it's not a turtleneck. There's a, you know, an opening in between the fabric, which presumably connects with this opening. So I'm just trying to put a dark line there, essentially. But now I'm going to have to let it sit a minute before I work on that section some more. All right, but let's get some skin on this guy. who I do want to be pretty pale, but I'm also trying to do more shadow colors, so I'm going to start with my darker colors. Just because I'm trying to match him to that one pillow. I would probably come back and actually paint the hands later, because I've got to get into this. There's a little pommel of the sword that's sticking up there, and then this hand's around this spear haft, so I'm just gonna pretty much ignore that for now. So I think I ran out of fun facts before I expected to. So is there anything, anybody have any questions or anything any more foods we want to talk about? Clavicus says, I feel like not enough people are raving about the return of Dragonlance novels. So I will confess that I've never actually read the Dragonlance novels. So I guess that's why I'm not raving. But I don't know what other people's excuse is. Is he staying in frame? No, he is not. Wow, this is like one of the shadow colors I picked for this hair. I did pick a very, I was going to try and make him platinum blonde, but this does seem painfully light even as a shadow color. But we will see. We'll make it work. The shadow color that I picked is a little more transparent. So, like the darkest shadow color is, where did it go? Where did it go? It's disappeared. Nope. Well, I hope I'm not going to need any more, because I'm not getting any more. It must be here. There we go. Bone Shadow, which I like a lot, and I have used. It doesn't seem like it would go with blonde hair, but just the way blonde hair in shadow looks, it doesn't go brown exactly. So I like this color. For dark blonde hair. But the colors I have picked are different than the ones I usually use for blonde hair. So we'll see if it actually works, or if I just have to adapt a color I picked for something else. Currently, I've been catching up on the Dresden Files, because I hadn't read the last few. But then, after we watched Dune, I was like, well, I haven't read this in 1,000 years, so maybe it'd be fun to read that. And then I ended up watching this movie on Netflix called Passing, which is based on a novella from the Harlem Renaissance. And it was super interesting, and it turned out that the novella was free with my Audible subscription. So then I got distracted from the other two things I was reading and started reading that. And I recommend both, either or both. The book, or the novella, or the Netflix movie Passing. Well, I don't think it's just on Netflix. I think Netflix just happens to have it. I think it went to a bunch of festivals and stuff first. So this brown is actually a shadow color. It's not one of the original colors. But now that I think about it, I think I was gonna, I'm gonna mix a different color for that. I was gonna do the leather kind of as an adaptation of the skin colors. Quindy doesn't want fantasy. She wants haunted houses and spooky ghosts. And Elijah7 asks whether I pick my Winsor Newton brushes up at the store or order online. I am fortunate enough to have a good art store, so I do buy the regulars in person when they go on sale at my local store, which is probably every 3 months or so. They rotate which brands are on sale. But they do not carry the miniature. And even a lot of the online places don't carry the miniature. Like, I don't think Cheap Joe's carries it, which is unfortunate, because when I suggest people to go buy the palette like Anne has, you can't also, like, toss in a Series 7 miniature if you want one to help get up to the free shipping price. So I think I usually get those. I'm not even sure that Jerry's Artorama Online has them. I think I get them at Dick Blick. So the reason I say Jerry's Artorama Online, so there are Jerry's Artorama physical stores. And then there are a couple of stores that are called Jerry's Artorama, but are not. I do not know the exact story behind this. I think Jerry's Artorama bought out the original art store, or got information from them or something. So they kind of use Jerry's Artorama Online as a distributor, but they're their own store. They set their own prices. They set up their own, workshops or specials or whatever they want to do. There are only 2 of them. They even have their own website. So if you actually want to order from those stores, it's yourartsupplies.com. And one of the 2 is in Knoxville. So I go to Jerry's Artorama, but it's not really Jerry's Artorama. It's actually a local art store that I have supported quite a lot. You know how they have like whales at Vegas? For a while, everyone that worked at this store knew my name. I mean, a bunch of them are college kids, so they graduate. So I think there's a new crop and they don't all know me. But I'm like, that's not a good thing. If people at the store know your name, that's because you are spending too much money. That's a problem. Now I have to figure out what to do with his weapon haft as well. Maybe I will use that other dark brown for that. So these 2 dark browns are going to look similar in the shadow stage, but we shall distinguish them at a later stage. I mean, this is probably true of a lot of things, that they look very similar at the shadow stage. In color. I mean, oops, I'm totally off the frame. And on the topic of ordering brushes, I do consider Dick Blick to be a reliable place to order from. I ordered a brush once, and it didn't have that little plastic thing. It didn't have the little brush protector plastic thingy. So I don't keep these to put on my brushes, but I've actually used them in basing and stuff, so I keep them for other reasons. Well, okay, that one doesn't fit, but let's imagine it did. If you can get that on, like your vision is good enough and your eye coordination is good enough that you can get that on there without doing anything to the bristle, that's fine, but let's demonstrate this test with a crappier brush. But what a lot of people do is something like that, and you'll get a few hairs on the other side, and you might not even notice if they're the very thin natural hairs, and you can damage your brush more trying to put the brush protector on than if you just, store it in such a way that the tip isn't getting mashed. Elijah7 says almost every hobby shop they go into, they know. His name is known. Yeah. We're the whales of nerddom. Just always coming up with new cool art supplies, and I like all the mediums, so that's not great news for my wallet. I'm still finding places where I need to poke that dark paint in to make sure that they're not going to be light colored spots later. Lost my pokiest brush. Let's see if I can get a little of that. Oh, there are some colors that seem to go a little goopy when they sit out, and I think that bone shadow turns out to be one of them. like I need to mix it with the next color up instead of using that khaki color. So this is why, this is kind of what, you know, if you've heard people talk about sketch style painting or sketching, I'm not entirely there yet because I'm not doing a lot of shadow highlight stuff. But this is kind of the beginning stage of that. And the function is kind of what I'm doing, is to see, do all these colors really work together once I get, you know, my, because I'm not just testing the main colors, I'm testing my choices for shadows and highlights. I could start, once I get to the shadows and highlight stage, making some decisions about where the light goes, making decisions about textures I might want to use or not use. And the point of that is, I mean, it's taking me a little longer because I'm talking with you guys. And honestly, I'm very slow at this part, even when I'm not talking to you guys. But this is, I haven't put a huge time investment into this miniature, where if I did my normal thing where I start with the face and finish that, and then I'd have done this chainmail. By the time I get to the hair and find out that my color choices don't work, I might, you know, what do I have to change? How much extra effort is it going to be to change stuff? So the point of it is to do some initial work to figure that stuff out. And then once you know you have all those choices and maybe your light choice and stuff like that dialed in, then you can spend as much or as little time as you wish on the refining stage. And I do totally understand the logic behind that, and I think it's a good idea. I will confess that I do not often work that way in principle in my own painting. Partly because sometimes it's just hard to reach stuff. It's like, well, I had to paint that little chainmail thing before I could paint other stuff. I think a lot of the people who are doing this are doing it with figures that are larger than gaming scale. So they're doing it with busts and 75 millimeter or larger characters and stuff like that. But certainly there are people who do this with gaming scale figures too. And I figure, since it is a good idea, it's good practice for me to attempt to do it. And that, as you may or may not remember, depending on how long you've been here, one of the reasons I call this Beyond the Kit is the idea of experimenting and pushing and learning more about your supplies and taking chances and stuff. So I want to do that on stream so that you guys see me messing up, and maybe you'll feel more comfortable about taking chances even if you are going to mess up a little when you do it. Elijah7 says, I'm absolutely horrible on my brushes. I was going to pick up a bunch at a con last weekend and all of the vendors were wiped out. Maybe it's time to try quality. It may hold up to my abuse better. You can also have quality brushes that you just use for specific tasks. I mean, I do kind of tend to use my good brushes for dry brushing, or not for dry brushing, because actually sable brushes don't dry brush well, so don't use them for that. But for, you know, everyday tasks, I usually use them for base coating and stuff like that. And I just accept that they're going to wear out a little early. What's really abusive to brushes is, well, putting them point down in water. I mean, no brush is going to survive that. It's bad for the, you know, even here, if you start getting water up in here, the wood swells and then this could fall off. Or the glue could loosen and the bristles will fall out. Because they make this, they have like a clump of hair, natural or synthetic. And then they glue it and tie it off, and then they stick this metal thing onto the brush end. So don't do that. Don't leave your brushes face down in water. This this kind of thing that we do, you may have seen that I would switch to a red-handled synthetic when I'm poking. So, poking into the little holes of underhangs, or even, if I was trying to make sure I got stuff in every little crevice of in between the scale mail, or especially chainmail is even worse. Sometimes you really got to poke in to get the paint. But that's why we wear out brushes a little faster than someone who paints on paper would, because even though paper will, it does have some tooth, it will eventually wear a brush down. We're working on a 3D surface with nooks and crannies, and we're pushing and we're pulling, and it's a little tougher on a brush than just painting a piece of paper or even a canvas. But where was I going with that? So there's a certain amount of wear and tear that just happens. So you can switch to cheap, crappy brushes when you're doing stuff like that, is one way to preserve the, if you buy a quality brush that's a little expensive, you can preserve it longer doing stuff like that. Rinsing them out regularly. So, every minute or two, rinsing it out and then loading it up with paint again. So we want to try to prevent paint from drying in the bristles. If you can, only dip in, and I'll get a bigger brush so it's more obvious. It should show up on this one. So you want to try to dip in only, about a third to a half, if you can. So instead of going like this and having paint potentially getting up into the ferrule, that's what you don't want. You don't want paint up in the ferrule. Which actually I can sort of tell that this brush has a little, because you can kind of see that where the bristles meet that ferrule, they don't look the same as they look down here, and they did look the same when I first bought the brush. This is the same brush, which actually, this is the same brand. So they're both Ebony Splendor Creative Marks. This is the brush I did all my paint maintenance with. So I did, 800 bottles of swatches and stuff like that with this brush. So it's, and I've had it a while now. I've done some other stuff, and this is just, I liked it well enough that I went and bought a set, and that's the smaller one from the set. So the discoloration, I don't care about that much. That's probably just from blue and green paints that have phthalo in it. But that, where there's color building up towards the ferrule, that means that there's paint in there. And I actually had one of my nice brushes before I sat down to paint with you today. I realized that it had some problems, and I have found this soap to be very effective. The Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. You might have to do it multiple times. You get this a bit wet. You get the brush a bit wet. You rub it around in there, and let's try it, because we may find that there's gonna see the color coming up. And some of that's I just did, but I don't want to put this on my work sponge. But I would keep doing that until no color was coming up and the brush looked better. So I don't clean my brushes after every session as a rule. I clean my dry brushes. Every time I use a brush for dry brushing, that gets paint well stuck in a brush. Also flats, if I'm working with a flat, I will typically clean that after the session, because paint just gets stuck in those flats and filberts. But round brushes, I find, unless I'm seeing a problem or the brush is starting to splay or not work well. So it's not completely fixed, but it's a little better. So if I gave it one or two more treatments. And you can put this on it and then leave it for a little while and then come back. Now, to be fair, I haven't tried some of there's a couple of miniature companies that are selling brush cleaner, but I can't imagine it's like super different from that stuff. Trashorama said they thought it was called Beyond the Kit because we were going to talk about Knight Rider. I'm going to shock you now and say that I never actually watched that show. I'm familiar with, Kit and kind of the basic premise, but I never actually watched that show. That was back in the day when if you weren't home that day, you just didn't get to watch that show. Anyone young is just sitting, staring at the screen going, what is she yammering about? You don't get to watch that show. If you pay for the right streaming service, you can watch whatever you want. But I know that I'm not the only person who is not super young in the chat. John's there. He's like, he never understands what I'm saying. I'm kidding. I'm not sure John was there the day. So when I was at Reaper, I had a traveler's check in my wallet for like a million years. I'd gone on this trip to London, and I think I had one left over when I came back. Or no, it was a trip to the U.S., I think. It was probably when I went to New York, when I was in high school. And I'm like, you know what? It's probably good. I'll just keep it in my wallet as like an emergency fund. If I'm ever somewhere, because, you know, most Canadian stores would accept it, even if they'd take it, they might not give you much value on it. They might say, well, you're just going to get a 1-to-1 rate, but they would take an American traveler's check. So I'm like, this is a good, you know, I'm not going to be tempted to spend it just because, you know, I want some chips or something. So I'll have it if I need it as an emergency thing, and I know I'll be able to spend it. And then like a million years later, I'm sitting at Reaper. It was one of the occasions when the artist stayed over, or the artist came down separately. And I was like, you know what? Like, no one even knows what this is anymore. It really no longer works as emergency money. So we were joking around. And we're like, hey, Ron, would you care if I go cash this in the Reaper store? And he's like, okay, that's going to be hilarious because the person that is working there right now is going to not have any idea what that is. So we actually, like, we all went over to watch and see what he would do. And he just keeps looking at Ron. He's like, this is a joke, right? Like, this is fake money. This is not real. I'm really not supposed to cash this. This is like you're trying to trick me and catch me out. And he's like, no, for real. Like, take it. Just pretend it's money. Give her the change. It was hilarious. So I bought some dice or something. I can't remember what I bought now. Every now and then when we're at Reaper, I try not to buy too many dice anymore. But I'll walk through the store and there'll be like these super pretty ones. And I'm like, nope, gotta have it. I'm trying to get some of my lining in because I do not like the stress of having to line after I've spent a lot of time painting stuff. So I think the color scheme's working all right. Let's put the other brown here. Trash bought some dice this weekend. Were they super cool? Are they nifty? They keep doing neat things with dice. Now they put things in the dice. So I have a pair with, I have a set with butterflies in them. It's like little tiny butterflies. They're inside the plastic. I think I have another one with fall leaves and then ones with snowflakes. So I call those my Canadian set. I mean, it's really two sets that I put together. I ended up having so many that I bought some little glass jars when I saw them on sale, and I put them out on display. So ones I'm not using, I put out on display. But if any of you are watchers of Reaper Errant, which honestly I do not know if it is happening this week, let me check whether there's been any. Nope. Updates. What do I want to do with his bow? So I don't know if we're going to do Reaper Errant, but if you've watched Reaper Errant, I'm not like the worst dice roller. It's not like I always get ones or whatever. It just happens enough to annoy my fellow party members at crucial moments. So there are now. I have to have my headwear. You may also notice that I wear weird hats, and some of my headwear gets unimproved if I'm rolling particularly badly when I have that hat on or that set of antlers or whatever. So I bought this toothless hat for Halloween episode. And I was rolling really crappy. And they're like, nope, take it off, put your regular one back on. I got to tune in the vibes with my antenna hat. Then when I told, I sent a picture of my little dice display to Michael and some other friends. And he's like, well, surely there are some dice in there that roll well. And I'm like, it's not the dice, Michael. It's me. It doesn't matter which pair I use or which set I use. I might as well just go on using the very nice Reaper pizza dice. Ooh, Trash bought obsidian dice from Wormwood. Ooh, that sounds pretty cool. Oh, that's right. It was BGG-Con this weekend. And a wooden case made from some rare ebony wood from Asia. Ooh. So, sounds like some of you went to BGG-Con. Hopefully you had a good time. I have not yet been able to attend that one, although we do go to some board gaming cons. We've been to cons with the people who started BGG-Con, but since I go to the Dallas area a couple times a year already, we don't tend to prioritize that as a vacation destination. All right. Thought I had found a place that I missed, and I did. Some of this is his hood. He seemed like he would be a nice, easy miniature to paint on stream, and I'm not sure if I feel like I'm taking that back. No, is that actually a strap? What is happening with his straps? Okay, I think it's the strap that holds the quiver on. So, well, if I make this color. Accessories are like my least favorite part of figuring out colors, because it's like, all right, eventually I run out of colors. I mean, I like having a unified color scheme, but it's also important to make sure that things stand out from other things. Elijah 7 says you can never have enough dice, and that seems like a very solid philosophy to me. Some stuff I should line around. Actually, I'm going to stop for a minute because I suspect we had people that came in a bit later, and I want to make sure that those people see this cool guy up close and personal. So this is a Gingerbread Warrior. I don't know his official name really. But this year he's going to be available in the holiday sampler. So if you spend $60 or more on the Reaper store site, you will get a bag that includes this guy and 2 paints, which I think are Ginger Cookie and Hollyberry.
I didn't use ginger cookie on the guy because I was going for a different kind of gingerbread, but I do use holly berry on the red. I think there may be candy in there too. And that will start December 1st, which is also when the 12 days of Reaper start. I didn't grab the graphic, but I'm sure Reaper will put it on the front page by December 1st. But during the 12 days of Reaper, there are some special miniatures that aren't normally available. So they're only available during that time. If I recall correctly from Reaper Live, this is going to be one of them, the Mistletoe Goblin. I painted him last year. There's a post on my blog, something about painting red. But I did paint him red. So I painted his top a lighter red and then his pants a darker red. And I thought it might be fun to paint his clothes on stream to talk about the challenges of painting red and some tips for painting red. Also because my parents fell in love with the picture of the one I painted last year that was for Reaper. And they were hoping I would paint one for them. So I figured I can show you the start of that by painting on his red clothes. I mean, normally I would paint his little face and stuff first, but I think I can work around that. But then there will be 11 other cool figures. There's the dragon opening presents, or with a big pile of open presents. I remember that one being on the graphic. There are a couple of the little Christmas dragons that are super cute. I think the fairy was one of the ones they had. So it's a version of this drawing. But I enjoy the holiday figures a lot. And then after I paint them from Reaper, I never paint them again. So it's a holiday tradition now for me to paint a holiday miniature. So that was the gingerbread man this year. Oh, and the base, I know it's a big giant base. My original plan was to try to get a doily on there somehow. And I'm still thinking about how to do that, whether, it's going to be pure freehand. Look at Quindy. She's a superstar because it doesn't even have red in the title. It has scarlet in the title, which is kind of red, but not the word that I told her was there. But she found it anyway. So I want to experiment with getting actual paper on there, and then if it doesn't work, I guess I'll just see how much I hate myself if I want to do free-handed doily. Elijah 7 has the War on Christmas Village Kickstarter stuff to paint. There are some very fun miniatures in that. But I know there are a lot of people who they only want to paint things they would use in gaming. But like if you ever want to give gifts to family members or friends who don't really get what we're doing, stuff like the Christmas miniatures are perfect for that purpose. Plus, sometimes it's just fun to paint something that is for fun. It's not like a big stress ball of horribleness. Yeah, I might need to change the shadow color on his hair, I think. I did put red in the index. Oh, okay, well, that was smart of me. Because I know people have trouble painting red, so it probably occurred to me that I should make it obvious to find that particular post. Because my secret weapon for painting red is salmon. A salmon-y color. Which I will show you guys. I'll show you how I do that. I mean, I don't know, I paint the best red miniatures ever, but I think I managed to walk the line between the highlights being orange or being pink, which is one of the big challenges with painting red. At least in my experience. Once I cracked that nut, I was much happier. And then putting in a lot of shadows, because keeping your red part red and putting a lot of shadows in is how you make it look red, is my belief. The fun part will be me trying to remember what these shadow colors are that I next week. If I keep painting this next week. I don't know if you guys would like me to do that or switch over to more holiday related type things, like start to work on, do the red guy. That I was also thinking, yeah, I could do one of how not to paint red and green. Like if you want to use the colors red and green, but you don't want to end up with Christmas, that pairing is just so iconic at this point that it becomes a challenge to paint that and not have it look like Christmas. So I thought it would be fun to do that as well, especially for those people who are maybe tired of hearing about the holidays or don't celebrate that particular holiday, to have some alternate activities. Or I can just keep being non-Christmassy by working on the autumn elf here. So let me know if you have a preference. I don't promise to do the preference, but I certainly would take it under strong advisement. Got to give the people what they want, right? So I am using blue liner for the lining because there are very few colors that it doesn't work with. And my belief, dark blue is actually, well, no, it's not actually. It appears darker to our eyes because cool colors recede. But I'm sure you've heard me wax poetic about blue liner before. Extra bottle recently because I was concerned about running out unexpectedly. Oh, there are holiday paint sets that I think probably don't start until December 1st. And I do not remember what all is in which one. I know there's new stuff that is a triad of s'mores related colors. So there's like marshmallow and graham cracker, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say chocolate, I think. And then there are some of the classic returning Christmas colors. And they're available in various configurations. I'm not sure John is still in the chat to correct any of my nonsense. But I don't think those paints start until December 1st, which is when if you spend $60, you get the Christmas sampler starts. And then also the 12 days figures. But what starts Cyber Monday is some paint bundles of kind of mystery paints. You get them in a cup or I don't know, sports drink cup. So like the standard Reaper cup. Well, actually that's not. I think that one's a bit bigger. So like something like this. Maybe I'll put it here. Which way am I going? There we go. That kind of cup. And I have one of those sports drink things, but I have it in the kitchen, not here, so I can't show you. But the one bundle has 8 paints in it, the cup I just showed you, and then the other one has 10 paints in it. There will be no duplicates within a set, so if you buy 8 paints, each of those paints will be a unique color. But if you bought 2 sets of 8, I think it's possible that you can end up with duplicates. And they're existing colors, sample colors, colors from, like special events like Reapercon colors, I believe. So that's Cyber Monday. Oh, and then the ships. The remaining stock of the pirate ships is going on the store for Cyber Monday, which is not connected to the Kickstarter 5.5. If you ordered one through that comes later after they make them and then send them over. I think I remembered all of that correctly, but I would go to the website and check things if you, or go watch last week's Reaper Live. If you have doubts in my ability to remember things, which is a very reasonable thing to have doubts in. Elijah 7 is now hungry for s'mores. I know. That was, I don't know if that was a brilliant or a terrible name for paint. And when Ann Forster, whose show you can watch at 11:30, I want to say 11:30 Reaper time every weekday. She used to, formulate the new colors and mix the paints and stuff for Reaper. And she had a policy of not naming things food colors. So this is a new thing, and perhaps it was so we wouldn't be hungry all the time. I suspect it was more to encourage people not to eat the paint. So don't eat the paint, even though it sounds like s'mores. Yeah, this is going to be super fun next week when I try to remember what colors I painted. Unless we just decide to move on to holiday fun. Nope, that was this brown. I guess we'll find out if I can color match very well next week. Work on his face a little bit. How much time do we have? Yeah, I can work on his face a little bit. Gotta go a bit darker because he does actually have some, his eyes are pretty deep set. And I'm probably, I'm not going to mess with trying to paint awesome eyes. So one of my articles recently was about trying to paint faster, and that was one of my tips. If you're painting miniatures for the tabletop, and eyes are holding you up, don't paint them. It's like you can't see them at scale. You're not obligated to put them in. So go ahead and leave them off if it makes your life easier. You can always come back and paint them again later on most figures. I mean, he might be a little hard to reach, and there'll be those characters that have like bangs or hats overhanging that are a little hard to get back into the eyes. But a lot of figures you can come back and paint them later when you are faster at painting eyes and more confident in your abilities. But I would have to hold him really close so that you probably couldn't see it if I wanted to paint his eyes. I eat enough paint repainting as it is. I don't need Godiva milk chocolate to make it worse. So I assume that means you're a brush licker, Elijah. Which is probably not ideal. If you can break yourself of the habit, I would do it. So what worked for Michael Proctor, who used to be, I mean, you would see him and his lips would just have like blue and purple and stuff all over him, is he gets paper towel and dampens it. And he was in that same workshop I took with Sergio Calvarubio. I use a sponge. So when I, dip my thing in water, I can kind of twirl it against the sponge. Or if I want to get, I'm pretty bad, like there's a blob of paint on that because I'm not one of these, dip the brush delicately in the paint. So I'll get the excess off there, and it's not going to take too much off because the sponge is damp. So it's not going to take too much of the moisture off. And then my brush point is ready to go. And if I need to test it, I can test it on something I haven't painted on the miniature to see if I'm getting a fine line without paint gooping off. I mean, I'm not saying it's the end of the world if you lick your brush, just that if you can try to minimize it, that is probably better for your health than not. Because when it does, actually, I'm not even sure if it does still say non-toxic on Reaper paints, and I think that's because the European laws changed about labeling and stuff like that. There's no change to the paint formula. I think it's changes to labeling expectations is why they stopped doing that. But it means non-toxic for intended use, not that you should put it on your cereal. Because intended use is this, like I might get a little bit on me because it's almost impossible for me not to get a little bit of paint on me when I paint. I do have to be careful because when I paint with oil paints or other stuff, I will use paints that have heavy metals in them because I'm old and I don't care. So there I have to try to be careful to, wash my hands before I go eat a sandwich. Or not try to rub the paint on me. Because they do not claim that those are non-toxic in any way, shape, or form. Elijah said he always learned something here. Well, thank you. My paints are, the ones that I spread out more are drying up well. So I'll share that as a wet palette tip, because I found wet palettes very confounding when I first used them. First of all, it is wet. Like you can see, there's water moving around in here. In fact, there's probably not quite enough. I keep it a little less wet for the show than I do normally because I'm apt to pick this up and put it on a shelf and move it around to show you other stuff, and I don't want to spill water all over the place. But also, so this pool is starting to dry out, and that's because it's spread out. Where this one, there may be a little skin, but I can get under it to fresh paint. So you will find a lot of wet palette users have little drops like this, and they mix on the brush. I live in like the most humid place. I have no idea how this paint dries out at all, but it does. So they'll do stuff like that, and then put that on the figure, and then if they need another one of that, they'll do it again, and then put it on the figure. Where I like to do these mixes where I know my values and my colors before I put anything on the figure. But because I do that, it spreads the paint out more, so more of it's exposed to the air to evaporate more quickly. So I rarely expect to be able to use my wet palette paint the next day. That's not, I'm using it to extend the working time during a session. I'm not expecting to be using it the next day. Weirdly, I would actually use a dry palette and put damp sponges on top of it, which I showed in another episode. Hey, wait, we have my thing where I can tell you what episode that was. It was the one where I painted the Halloween figure. So yes, Betty the Ghost Bride, which was number 18. I don't think it's on YouTube, though. I think it's hopefully still on Twitch. But it may have... I wanted to say scrolled off Twitch. That's not how Twitch works exactly. But it may have been rotated out of Twitch. I feel like those would be eyebrows, but I'm going to paint them as skin. Because otherwise it's just going to blend into the hair. I kind of have to do something with his eyes, I think. Which I probably want fresh paint for. Because of how I said my little dots were starting to skin over. Which again is super, because I live a very humid place. I don't know how people paint in Denver and the desert and stuff like that. But then I also don't know how they don't just get such horrific dry skin that they See, I'm not actually that great at this. I'm just stubborn, and I'll go back and fix it until I like it. Well, until I like it. Until I can live with it. Sometimes I like stuff I paint, and then I come back and I don't like it, and then I like it again, and I don't like it. And then I hate it. And then sometimes I even say, oh, did I paint that? That happened with one of the Halloween miniatures. And I was like, oh, look at all these pictures on my hard drive. I guess I painted that. Now, I don't like to make the lining around the eyes of male characters, particularly the bottom lid, too dark. Unless, I mean, I don't know if he's emo enough elf to be piling on the eyeliner. Can I put little eyeballs in? Have him looking slightly to the left. And I'm not going to go nuts with this. I'm going to call that good. I don't know if you can even see them. And I feel like when I zoom in too much, that the quality gets kind of weird. So it looks funny now because it's like his eye continues onto his hair. But as soon as I put the line back in, put the line between the eye and the hair, it will look less crazy. And that is one reason that I like to paint eyes as a rule before I get too into painting the skin and whatnot, because I would rather, you know, repaint the base coat on the hair than have the hair all finished before I start the eyes, and then I mess stuff up and then I get mad. I do want him to be fairly pale because that was, his skin is playing the part of this pillow, which is fairly pale. Oh yeah, that improves the sneer a lot. He's a sneery guy. I was adding just a little water, partly because the paint is drying up a little, but also these very pale colors that have a lot of white in them tend to be super opaque and more likely to go a little chalky when you put them on. So while I don't typically thin all my paints very much anymore, I mean I used to, I still often thin stuff I know is white so it doesn't get streaky. Or not that is white, that has white in it. And that isn't even the lightest color I picked up in this guy. But his hair is going to get a lot lighter than this by the end. So I don't think it'll look weird once the hair comes in. And if I'm going to have a place that's super contrasted, I want it to be the face, because that's where, defaulting from any other thematic decisions I might have for the character, that is where I want a lot of attention to be. And I did just totally goof up and get a bunch of paint on his hair, and that's fine. I haven't painted that part yet, so I'm not going to stress about it. Acrylic paint covers over itself very well. Let's see where we are. Oh, we are getting close to time, and I have to run out to the vet. We realized that Our one cat has fleas, so we have to go get some flea medicine. Well, obviously for all the cats, because like I said, one cat has fleas. The other cat probably also has fleas. Fleas are like the one insect on earth that don't bite me. So I never notice for having bites on myself. But anyway, so I don't know. I didn't feel like I got that far. Hopefully that wasn't too boring for you guys. Wow, that face really looks stark. It doesn't look that stark in person. I think it's just the between the camera and the things around it being darker. Maybe I'll try to take a picture. Since I can show you photos now. But I'll show the gingerbread man one more time before I go. Because I'm happy. And actually, I meant to mention that. I used the, if you've been here for my dry brushing test things, I use one of these, the dome dry brushing brushes to paint him. Because I wanted it to have that, you know, when you got a nice spicy gingerbread dough, the spices make it look speckly. So I put into practice some of the stuff we've been testing the past couple of months. So you can get this guy in the Christmas sampler if you order $60 or more worth of stuff off the Reaper site starting December 1st. And let me go back to this view. Turn that off. Oh, and my camera's frozen. Look at that. I wonder how long that I've been looking crazy. That's fine. I don't always notice that. So thank you for coming. I will briefly tell you some of the other options you have. This being a holiday week. I actually don't 100% know whether or not Crow's Nest is happening tomorrow. I think it is. I haven't heard that it's not. And then Wednesdays is Miniatures Den with Luca. That I believe starts at 1 p.m. Texas time. And then Tuesday is Crow's Nest is at 5 p.m. Texas time. But I don't think there will be any shows on Thursday because that is a holiday in America. I don't think that they plan to do Reaperland, and we're still trying to figure out whether we're doing Reaper Errand. So keep an eye on the Reaper socials, and hopefully you will hear more about the adjusted schedule this week. And I will be back next week with, I don't know, maybe I'll continue painting on the self. I kind of want to get him finished at some point, but that point doesn't have to be now if I feel like it's a good time to switch over to holiday fun. But I think it'd be cool to keep painting on him for a bit. See if I can get a little farther. I mean, I really feel like I didn't get very far, but I think it's set up to go a lot faster next time. And I really should put something on his base as well, but that's a different problem. Quindy believes normal streams Tuesday and Wednesday, but no streams Thursday or Friday. So I know the way Reaper Errant works, that even if someone at Reaper doesn't want to do it, if everyone else involved does want to do it, there's still a chance it could happen. But yes, as far as I know, everyone at Reaper is off on Thursday and Friday, and hopefully those of you who are in America have a great Thanksgiving or just enjoy some days off. Or if you're having to work Black Friday, God go with you. Because that's a whole thing. And I guess I'll see you next week. I'm sure Quindy's going to find us a raid. There must be other people doing fun hobby or hobby adjacent things on Twitch right now. I mean, there's always something, right? I mean, if nothing else, there are otters who are not hobby related, but what's more fun than otters? Jarrett's Terrain Minis. Oh, that sounds fun. So you'll get a break from my boring talking too much about painting and see the wider terrain world. Thursday and Friday will be catch up on VODs days. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to those who are celebrating, and I'll see you next week because that's not going to be a holiday anymore. Bye.